Hi, I'm Jenelle Gavin. I'm a nature photographer, a teacher and a wildlife carer. And I love photographing Australian plants and animals, and I love teaching and learning. And one of the things that I love about photography is that you're always learning something new. By profession, I'm a biology and physics teacher, and I've found both of these disciplines have enabled me to experiment with particular type of photography. My interest in photography began during my university degree when I was producing a vegetation map of Ku-ring-gai Chase National Park, and I became very interested in photographing those. My interest in photography continued after that. In fact, during bushwalking trips with my family, the children would often say, "Have you finished taking photographs yet, Mum?" So we could move on. It became a bit of a family thing. I have two boys and a very supportive husband, and they've been quite involved in the whole photographic journey. My husband in particular is fantastic. He carries my gear and helps me set things up, and I really couldn't do it without him. I purchased a macro lens and started to try and photograph some of these amazing details that I found. And I was very disappointed because I found that the macro lens has a very shallow depth of field, and that means that only a very small portion of the subject was in focus and the rest of it was blurry. So I put that aside for a while and continued taking other types of photographs. I still was photographing plants and animals and Australian landscapes, but I wasn't concentrating so much on that macro photography. Then in 2013, I suffered a back injury and I wasn't able to travel very much at all. I was unable to sit for very long in a car. I decided I would try and photograph things that were much closer to home, and that's when I started investigating macro photography again and using that macro lens. Focus stacking is when you take multiple photographs of a subject focusing on a different plane. So as you focus through the different planes of the subject, you get one image for each plane, and that part of that image will be in focus. I was hooked once I discovered that, and I spent a lot of time experimenting until I became quite good at it, and that would be the area that I do most of my photography with these days. The photographic technique of focus stacking comes with some challenges. Like all photography, composition and lighting is essential to get correct, and that is particularly difficult with macro photography. But focus stacking in addition has extra problems, and there can be no movement at all while you're taking your stack of photos. So you might be taking 20 photos or 40 photos of one particular subject. If there's any air movement that occurs during that process and the plant or the subject moves at all, then the process is not going to work. You often don't know that the plant has moved until after you've finished your stack and you've put them in the computer, and to discover that during that petal opened or there was a slight movement, and then you have to start all over again. I also enjoy photographing the local wildlife, particularly the wildlife that visits our garden. We have a lot of birds that visit our garden, and I am able to photograph those without having to travel. I love sharing my knowledge and skills with others, and my love of the Australian bush and the Australian flora and fauna, and sharing my images with other people. I mentioned that I'm also a wildlife carer. In 2003, found a small baby ringtail joey in our front garden, and this poor little baby ringtail's mother had been killed. And I didn't know how to care for it, and I contacted the local wildlife rescue people, and there was no one available to assist with that. And unfortunately that little baby ringtail did not survive. So I thought, what could I do if this happens again? And so I joined Sydney Wildlife Rescue and I did their training course so that I could become a wildlife carer. I've had a variety of animals in my care since then, lots of ringtail possums and brushtail possums, birds, including tawny frogmouths, parrots, lorikeets, magpies. In fact, the very first animals that I cared for was a pair of baby magpies. I love magpies, and the whole family became involved in raising these little baby magpies. Being a wildlife carer is a very rewarding experience. For example, I recently raised two little baby sugar gliders. One was 18 grams and the other one was only 20 grams when they came into care, being totally dependent on me for their nutrition, keeping them warm. They didn't have their mother to look after them. They would have been in their mother's pouch. I was able to raise them through to being released to their release weight, which was 110 grams. And this also gave me the opportunity to photograph their development, which just made the whole experience much more rewarding. I shared the images of the little sugar gliders with some people at my school, teachers and staff, and this was happening during the lockdown, and it was a regular thing where I was asked for updates on the little Gary and Glenda, the sugar gliders, and it was just provided an uplifting thing for the staff and students, and was something positive during a very difficult time. And in fact, one person sent me a message and said, "It made my heart sing." So that just made it even more special. The advice that I would give other creatives is, keep trying. Practice, practice, practice. Ask lots of questions. There are no silly questions. Keep it simple. Often simple is best. Take your inspiration from nature. Try to look at the world with a different perspective. Connecting with nature is very important. I feel that nature has a way of recharging our depleted batteries in a way that nothing else is able to do.